In the book of Job, there was a guy named Job.
Of course, his name was Job. The book's about him.
Anyway, he was from a land called Uz, or maybe it's Uz. I'm not real sure how to pronounce it. But Job was a pretty important guy. He had lots of livestock, lots of land. He had 10 kids, 7 sons and 3 daughters. I've only got 2 sons and 3 daughters, and I'm pretty sure that's too much. Anyway, he was a pretty important guy. He thought he was, blameless, sinless. He never claimed perfection, but he always kept a close watch on himself and made sure he was honest. He was always respectful towards God. He always sought wisdom. Pretty good guy. I only have 1 daughter. I don't know why I said 3 daughters. Job was such a good guy. He would even take up for his kids if he thought maybe they had done something wrong. If they were throwing a party and he thought, maybe they got a little
buck wild,
he'd make a sacrifice to God and just be like, hey, I don't know if they actually did anything or not, but I'm sorry if they did. So one day, the Lord's there, hanging out with his angels, and Satan shows up, and he's like,
Hey, what's up?
And the Lord's like, not much, man. Where you been? What's going on? And Satan said, just been cruising around the world, checking stuff out, looking at all these losers you created. And the Lord was like, what? Surely you've heard about Job. Satan's like, who? And the Lord said, Job. He's the coolest dude. He's got his act together. Maybe you should try tempting him. He's honest. He does what's right. He respects God and he avoids evil. So Satan said, well, of course he does. Of course he does what's right. You make everything so easy for him. Why wouldn't he do what's right? Why wouldn't he respect God? Duh. So Satan said, well, fine. Strike down everything he's got. Take away all this stuff he has. Then we'll see. See how he does. See how he treats you. So the Lord agreed. He said, all right, do your worst. Knock it all down. Take it all out from under him. Just don't touch Job himself. So Satan left the Lord and was on his way. One day, there was a party going on. And all of a sudden, everything just fell apart. One messenger came and said all the livestock was dead. Another one came and said all these other livestock is dead. And another one came and said all these servants are dead. And then all his kids were dead. It was a bad day. When Job heard all this, he got pretty upset. Now back then, the ways you showed that you were in mourning, you'd tear your clothes, you'd sit on the ground and throw dirt all over yourself. And if you had hair, if you had hair, you'd shave your head. So he sat down, tore his clothes after he shaved his head, and threw dirt all over himself. He fell on the ground and he worshiped God and he prayed. He said, I came into this world naked with nothing, and I'll leave this world naked with nothing. Then another day later on down the road, Satan came wandering back up to the Lord and his angels, stirring up trouble again. The Lord said, all right, where you been? What's going on? And Satan said, I've been cruising around the world again, just looking at all these losers you made. They sure are pathetic. The Lord said, well, what about Job? Whatever happened to him? You took away everything he had, and he never lost his faith. He never blamed me for anything. He just accepted it, and moved on with his life. So Satan said, well, yeah, you took away all his stuff, but you didn't do anything to him. He's still perfectly fine walking around. He was okay losing all this other stuff, but he didn't want to lose himself. Maybe you should do something to him, hurt him personally. So the Lord said, okay, fine, do what you want to him, just don't kill him. All right? So Satan left the Lord, and he was on his way again. So Satan sent these sores to be all over Job's body. He had sores from the soles of his feet all the way up to the top of his head. And he took this piece of pottery, broken piece of pottery, and he would scrape all these sores open, just scrape the goo out of them. And he did this while he was sitting in this pile of ashes. And Job's wife came to him and said, what are you thinking? Why do you still have faith in God? Why don't you just give it all up? Just tell God no thanks and let him kill you. So Job answered his wife and said, you're talking crazy, woman. We accepted all these good things from God all our life. We should also accept these bad things, whatever he lets happen. Through all of this, Job never did anything sinful. And then he had these 3 friends that came to visit him. And they got closer to him where they could see him and see how bad a shape he was in. They just felt so awful. They just laid down and cried. They felt so bad for him. So they just went over and sat with him for 7 days in silence while Job mourned. 7 days of just sitting there with their friend, because they didn't want to interrupt his mourning process. They didn't want to disturb him as he was grieving. So Job and his friends spent the next 28 chapters arguing back and forth about how Job hadn't done anything wrong. Why would God do this to me? I'm such a righteous person. I don't know why God's doing this to me. I haven't done anything. I haven't sinned. And then his friends were making the argument that you must have done something. Surely you did something wrong. God's not going to punish you for being pure. You've done something wrong. And just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And Job even gets so bold as to say, I can't wait until I can actually talk to the Lord about this. I have my statement prepared. I have witnesses. I am just ready to go against God. I haven't done anything at all. You can ask anybody. In comes Elihu, this young guy. We didn't even know he was standing there while Job and his buddies were going at it. He's this young dude. He's been listening this whole time. He hasn't said anything because he knows his place. And he says, Job, come on, man. You know better than this. You're sitting there saying how right you are when God's the one that's right. Whatever he's got going with this, he's right in this. You're not. So Elihu tells Job, you're wrong. These other 3 dudes are wrong. None of y'all know what you're talking about. They're trying to say you're guilty of something, and they have no idea if you're guilty or not. They just want you to cast the blame on God and go on with your life. And here you are thinking you're so righteous, thinking you're such a good person, and you're not. God is the only one right in this situation. Then Elihu goes on to tell Job how good God is, how God made this and made that, and he controls this and controls that. God's in control of everything. Why in the world would you think you could do any of this? God is the one who does all of this. So the Lord works up a storm and starts speaking to Job through this storm. And he says, Mr. Big Stuff, who do you think you are? I'm the one that creates all this and controls all this. What have you done? You can't do anything. And the Lord continues to drill Job for 4 or 5 chapters, just bringing up point after point. And Job just realizes he's an idiot. He doesn't stand a chance. Why in the world would he think he would be right? Why would he let his pride grow so much that he thought he was smarter than God. He thought he was right and God was doing something wrong. Then Job realizes how wrong he is. He tells the Lord, I hate myself. I really shouldn't have done what I did. I shouldn't have said these things about you. I'm really sorry. And then the Lord forgives him and turns around and blesses him. He gives him twice the livestock he had before and the servants. He gives him 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. Isn't that how it is with us sometimes? We get so wound up with how good of a Christian we are, or how nice we are to people, or we do this right, we do that right. We kind of get a big head about it. I'm the prettiest in the land, or I'm the smartest, or I'm the nicest, or I do the chores without anybody asking. I do this, I do that. I'm such a good person. But then, if you take a look at yourself, you got all kinds of stuff wrong with you. Even if it's just the pride of you thinking that you're all that in a sack of potato chips, there's something wrong with you. It might be something small, might be something big. It doesn't matter in God's eyes. Sin's sin. If you're a human, you're dirty. You got something on you. You're not perfect. You're not as good as you think you might be. I know I'm guilty of it. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, the Apostle Paul is talking about how anything we do, the power does not come from us. That power comes from God. And through the new covenant that God offers us through Jesus, once he died on the cross and raised from the dead and defeated death, how we have that same power through the Holy Spirit. When was the last time you did a self-evaluation and asked yourself, self, what's holding me back? What's keeping me from growing closer to God? Father, thank you for mirrors. Thank you for the ability to look at ourselves and to ask ourselves, why am I the way that I am? I only want to be closer to you, God. Help me to get control of my life. Help me to get control of my words and my actions and my thoughts. I want to glorify you with who I am. I can never amount to anything without you, God. In your name I pray, amen. Well, one thing's for sure. I would not like the showbiz business. These bright lights are horrible. Just staring at the camera with a bright light right beside it. Why would anybody want to do this for a living? What did Buzz Lightyear say to Woody? A lot. There were like 4 movies. Sometimes I tuck my knees into my chest and lean forward. I don't know why, that's just how I roll. 2 goldfish were in a tank. One of them looks at the other and says, "Do you know how to drive this thing?" What's orange and sounds like a parrot? A carrot. There's some striking similarities between Winnie the Pooh and Alexander the Great. They have the same middle name. You know what's worse than finding a worm in your apple? Stubbing your toe. I can't take my dog to the park anymore because the ducks keep trying to bite him. Guess that's what I get for buying a purebred dog.